Tonight on Nissan's Bay Area Backroads, we'll discover Modoc County, one of the least known regions of California. We'll ride the range, hike in the wilderness, and visit a charming town in a magnificent valley where wildlife abounds, and there are more saddle makers than gas stations. We'll find a century-old store, an enormous lake, and wine made from wild plums. That's all coming up right now on Nissan's Bay Area Backroads. Modoc County, in the northeastern corner of California, is a region that's long intrigued us. It covers a large and diverse geographical area, but has one of the smallest populations of any California county, fewer than 10,000 people.
It's like being back in the frontier. It's like dropping back 100 years.
The motto of Modoc County is where the West still lives, and it's easy to see why. Cows far outnumber humans. Ranches dot the landscape. Many of them have been in the same families for generations.
The people are very tied to the seasons and the land and taking care of each other. It still has that sense of old-time community.
There are no traffic signals in the entire county, unless you count the one flashing light at the junction of Highways 299 and 395. It takes about 6 hours to reach Modoc County from the Bay Area, and we're going to explore the length of it, from the tiny town of Ayden in the southern end to the even smaller village of New Pine Creek, which straddles the Oregon border to the north.
And our trip begins in earnest along the banks of the Sacramento River as we leave the city of Redding at its elegant landmark, the Sundial Bridge.
This is also where we leave Interstate 5 behind and hit the Backroads. About an hour northeast of Redding, we stop to admire spectacular Burney Falls and its 129-foot drop.
Very nice.
A few miles out of our way, but well worth the detour. The weather in these parts is unpredictable, and sometimes the views are obscured. But we're very lucky, and as we climb out of the valley, Mount Shasta gleams at us from the west. And Mount Lassen greets us from the south. Soon, we reach Modoc County and roll into the town of Ayden.
There's only 400 people in this town.
Except for occasional trucks going by, Ayden is very quiet. The only eatery is the Frosty next to the church. Or you can get a good sandwich and pretty much anything else you might need at the old general store.
As you can see, it's in phenomenal shape. The floors are all original, all the beams. I was looking around one day trying to find a knot in some of the wood here, and you can't hardly find a knot in the wood. And what's the number?
Steve Gagnon and his wife Julie bought the Ayden Supply Company in 2004. The store has been in operation since 1906.
The highway actually was a dirt road, and it sat about 4 feet below the front porch right here. They would bring their horses and buggies in, and they would load from back at the warehouse. They would load up. And
when Steve and Julie took over the store, they inherited the warehouse behind it as well. A dilapidated barn filled with all kinds of stuff.
Oh, yeah. It was like a treasure hunt in here. You know, every day you'd come back here and you go, wow, honey! Look at this.
One of their finds was this beautiful counter.
There was a tarp over it, and we just lifted up the tarp and went, wow. Because we remembered seeing it in that picture back here, but that's part of the original counter that was in here back in I don't know if it was in here in 1906, but it was here in 1920. So this is just a wonderful piece of work here, but they had everybody's account.
Many of the treasures they uncovered are now back on display in the store.
And it still had the original sheets in it.
Oh, the accounts are still there. Look at
From
that.
1953.
It's hard to stop here and not be charmed.
People from the city, they come up and they slow down instantly. And they want to spend hours, you know, they want to spend hours just looking around.
And so do we. But we've got to go see a man about a horse.
We can take people out for an hour or a day.
Del Vroman and his wife Judy lead trail rides from their ranch just outside of Aden. They're going to take us up to one of their favorite overlooks in the Modoc National Forest.
You couldn't ask for a finer place. It's like going into a time machine. You come up here and nothing that's down there is important anymore.
It's called Rocky Mountain Eggs.
Rocky Mountain Eggs?
Before we saddle up, we're treated to a hearty chuck wagon breakfast by Del's friends Susan Walker and Tom Rickard.
All right, we'll be on our way.
All right, off we go.
Pretty soon, we set out, with Emma the dog leading the way.
She lets us know if there's any wildlife out there that might spook the horses. It's not easy having a dog smarter than I am, though.
Del has access to 50,000 acres of backcountry, all of it U.S. Forest Service land.
This is so great, coming in through the woods here, nice and comfortable.
Even in the heat of summer, it's nice out here.
And it's peaceful. Del says he almost never runs into anyone else along these trails.
The nice thing is to be able to share it with other people. There are a few campgrounds up here which are equestrian campgrounds that have corrals for the horses, camping facilities for the people.
We've been steadily climbing, and eventually we reach a terrific vantage point looking southwest.
Right out in front of us is Round Valley, where those two sloping hills come down. Some people will call mountains. Right there is tucked away Aden. And then beyond that is the Big Valley. And that's actually the name of it, the Big Valley. Millions of people, 5-6 hours away. And 5 and 6 hours isn't a very long time when you figure that what you can get to. You see what's waiting for you.
Well, you were right about getting a nosebleed up here.
We continue up a little further before we reluctantly call it quits.
And no matter how many times you make this ride, it still looks pretty good.
Never get tired of it, never take it for granted.
We drove through this terrain on our way to Del's ranch. Now we drive up to a fire lookout to get a peek at the landscape yet to come.
And this is a big vista of a big county. Modoc County is huge, and this is the direction we're headed now, to the north and to the east, and to a part of California that's even more remote.
Stay with us as we continue our journey through Modoc County with a hike in the wilderness and a visit to a surprising valley with rare birds, rare talents, and good coffee. For more information about the places we visited, log on to BayAreaBackroads.com or call the Backroads hotline at 415-447-6300. After our lovely horseback ride, we leave the town of Aden and head northeast into the heart of Modoc County, with some eccentric sights along the way. The spaces are wide open, and it's about an hour before we reach the first sizable community.
Oh, this is it, the famous flashing red light, the closest thing to a stoplight in all of Modoc County, and it's right here in downtown Alturas.
With a population below 3,000, Alturas is by far the largest municipality in Modoc County. We happen to be here when the annual Modoc Classic Car Tour chugs into town. These motorists know what we're about to find out, that Alturas is a launching point for some great adventures. There's not a whole lot in Alturas. It has a few restaurants and places to stay. But just outside of town is a wonderful wildlife refuge. And beyond that, the possibilities are limitless.
There is a great opportunity for solitude. You can be here during the week and hike 15 or 20 miles of trail and never see another person.
E.D. Asrow of the U.S. Forest Service is taking us to the South Warner Wilderness, part of the Warner Mountain Range in eastern Modoc County. The scenery is stunning, and we barely even see another person as we drive toward our destination. We stop to admire the pastoral beauty of Jess Valley.
People appreciate how special this place is, and that it's special because we still live with nature.
We continue driving to an elevation of about 7,000 feet and start walking. I'm surprised when practically the first things we see are cows. But cattle and sheep grazed here long before this was declared a wilderness, and some grazing is still permitted. We ascend through an area that was badly burned in 2001 and into what Edie says was one of the most popular hunting spots in the state.
Over the years, Fish and Game has lowered the number of permits, but it's still very famous for turning out very large deer.
As we gain altitude, we start to get some perspective. We also begin to see a remarkable bush called mountain mahogany.
And they're able to grow out of the rocks, and they create these gnarled survival shapes, almost like a Japanese bonsai tree, and sometimes we have whole forests of them.
We're at roughly 8,000 feet now, and Eagle Peak comes into view.
That is the highest point in the South Warner Wilderness and in the Warner Mountains. It's just under 10,000 feet.
That is a pretty mountain.
We won't quite make it to Eagle Peak this time, but we do get some nice vantage points nonetheless. First, to the east. As we hike a little further, the landscape to the west opens up, and we can see Jess Valley way down below.
And there's just almost no sign of civilization. I mean, if you look in pretty much every direction your eye can see, it's just natural environment.
There are hints of humans past, but they're very small.
Just about everywhere you'll walk, you'll find pieces of obsidian like this. Sometimes you'll find the whole arrowheads.
This could be, we don't know, but this could be a piece that was done by a native person here hundreds, thousands of years ago?
I'm sure it was done by a native person here. I can't tell you exactly when, but literally some of these are 10,000 years old.
We return it for others to enjoy. And soon we're back on the road, skirting the southern edge of the South Warner Wilderness, racing the sun for one more view.
Wow. This is unbelievable. I mean, really, this is incredible.
This is our first glimpse of Surprise Valley, the eastern edge of Modoc County.
Perhaps when the pioneers came across those mountains and this is what they saw before them.
Man.
I think that's why it was named Surprise Valley.
After a great hike, all this great mountain landscape here, and then we're in a different world here.
And when we come back, we'll explore that world, its beauty, its wildlife, and its characters. Then we'll complete our journey all the way to the Oregon border. Our travels through Modoc County have brought us to this remarkable place. Surprise Valley is about 70 miles long and 5 miles wide. Among its population of 1,200, there are 3 saddle makers, but there's only 1 gas station in the entire valley.
Surprise Valley, you know, you drop in, you're like, oh my goodness, there's water and life and beautiful greenery and birds everywhere.
Indeed, there are, from shorebirds to quail to golden eagles. But this area is most famous for a pretty rare bird in California, the greater sandhill crane.
They're these big, tall, graceful, geeky birds. They stand this tall. They're magnificent. They should be a national treasure.
A quarter of the state's breeding population of greater sandhill cranes lives most of the year in Surprise Valley, with the densest concentration on and around Sophie Shepherd's ranch.
It's a good place if you like sandhill cranes to watch them.
Sophie and her husband, Lynn Nardella, raise Icelandic sheep.
Is it always like this in the mornings?
Oh, and it's not snowing.
They've offered to help us find some cranes.
Okay, we had nesting cranes down there.
Oh, right over in here?
And then we had a nesting pair down there, and there were some over in the next field.
Even though it's early in the morning, the cranes have left by the time we arrive. But we spot some down the road at a neighboring ranch. Then a few more. And more. all in the middle of agricultural activity. We even see a couple right on a little side road.
Well, they're moving away, but they're not running yet. They're not flying.
They're not flying.
But they are dancing. This crane choreography is part of an elaborate and amusing mating ritual. They're magnificent on the ground, in the air, and even just hearing them, which we do throughout the valley.
Cranes are the oldest living species of birds on the planet, so I figure that sound has been around for a long, long time, and it's nice to know that it's still here.
Surprise Valley is spectacularly beautiful, but it's also very isolating. It takes a special kind of person to live here.
And nobody's just one thing. You kind of have to be a lot of things to make an entire living, you know. In the winter you do this, in the summer you do that, and kind of patch it together. And if you're all right with squeaking by, it's a beautiful place.
Tierra Hodge Blom is a landscaper, a fence builder, and a Western poet who grew up in Surprise Valley. She's showing us around Cedarville, the valley's main town, which has some interesting shops, a couple of restaurants, and a small variety of places to stay.
You know, well, we have an occasional rodeo or a bull riding event or the county fair or the barbecue. The firemen barbecues are quite nice.
And the Modoc Classic Car Tour always comes through Cedarville and pretty much takes over Main Street.
For this little few weeks in summer, there's a lot that goes on. And then in winter, it's quite quiet and the car goes by a couple times a day.
Cedarville was first settled in the 1860s. Historic buildings still stand, and old traditions are still being practiced inside them.
This is Skip Arnew's saddle shop. He does some really beautiful work for a lot of the ranches around here.
Skip has been making custom saddles for nearly 40 years.
I'm just getting started. One of these days I'll learn what I'm doing.
Who's this one for?
My daughter, Vicky.
Oh, she's a lucky gal. That's beautiful.
What is she planning to use the saddle for? Regular?
Well, to ride.
Each saddle is painstakingly handcrafted, which is why Skip only makes about 6 or 7 saddles a year.
And while the leather is damp, I put the flour on there and wrap it with a hammer and the leaves, and it leaves the imprint of the flour in the leaf. Then I fill in everything else freehand.
That's absolutely amazing.
All the little twigs are freehand.
Wow.
Skip says that with proper care, this saddle should be in good shape for his daughter's great-grandchildren to use.
There's nothing finer than a piece of leather, really.
The West is certainly alive in Skip's workshop. And the modern world is right next door at the Surprise Cafe.
Wine, espresso, internet.
It seems that Cedarville has everything a visitor would need, even a good cup of coffee. But Tierra does have some advice if you're planning to come here.
Well, make sure you have gas in the car, a jacket in the summertime, not usually shorts in the winter, a good map, and just ask. Seasonally, there's always something going on, and everybody will know about it. Don't worry.
Stay with us for the final leg of our road trip over legendary Fandango Pass to the northern edge of California, where wild plums make fine wine. For more information about any of the places we visited, call the Backroads hotline or visit our website. Surprise Valley is so lovely, we hate to leave. But we're determined to reach the northern edge of Modoc County, so we head up the valley and turn west onto the dirt of County Road 9, otherwise known as Fandango Pass. It's a beautiful road, and it's also historic, as we learn when we reach the top. This was part of the old Applegate Trail, a major route for immigrants heading west for a new life.
In the mid-1800s, tens of thousands of people passed this way. So many people, so many wagons, you can still walk in the ruts they left behind.
We drive down the west side of the pass, and soon an enormous body of water looms in the distance. Goose Lake is 29 miles long, but its depth only averages 9 feet. And cows seem to be the only ones enjoying the shore. We travel north a few miles and enter the